Lesson 45. How can we learn grit from how Jesus suffered? Now, I'm not saying that your suffering is equivalent to Jesus. It's not. His is exponentially more difficult. But the process he went through to gain grit through suffering, you can go through and gain grit in your own suffering. And man, that is important. Because if you're not suffering now, you will be soon. And grit, turns out, is one of the key elements for success in life. So I want to airdrop into the Garden of Gethsemane. It's on the western slope of the Mount of Olives facing Jerusalem. It's not the same olive trees, but the same kind of olive trees. It's the same location, looking at the same city. And though the temple has been replaced by the Dome of the Rock, it's pretty much the same view that Jesus would have had in the full moon of the light of Passover. He takes his closest disciples, they're called apostles. There were 12, although one is MIA. He leaves 8 at the gate to this private olive grove, and he goes into the interior with his 3 best friends, Peter, James, and John, and tells them, I want you to stay awake and pray with me. In fact, he was so sorrowful, here's in his own words, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch. He needed his friends to be present in his suffering. And then he goes about a stone's throw away and prays. I don't know how to think through this carefully because I wasn't there and I can't see into the spiritual dimension. But it appears to me that Jesus is beginning the process of being transmogrified or transformed into sin itself. And he's beginning to feel, for the first time in all eternity, right here in the garden, the pain of being distanced from his Father. In fact, the pain unto death, Jesus said, was reflected in a little statement by Luke that he bled, or he sweat, drops of blood, which is a known medical condition, either hyperchloremic alkalosis or hematidrosis, where the corpuscles of your forehead literally burst under great stress. And you can sweat drops of blood that have been burst into your sweat glands. He's in trouble because physically he's reflecting the spiritual pain that is upon him. And here's his prayer. Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. 3 things stand out to me. First, Abba. Every prayer of Jesus, save on the cross when he's quoting Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Every prayer, Jesus begins with this intimate address of Abba, Father, and then gives you permission to pray the same. You're not praying to a distant God who doesn't care. You're praying to a Father who is crazy about you. Second, he says, let this cup pass from me. The cup is a metaphor in prophetic literature of the wrath of God being poured out on disobedient nations. And Jesus is now receiving that cup of wrath from the Father as he becomes the sin of the world. Third, Jesus says, not my will, but yours. I'm asking you to take the cup away, but ultimately I'm going to submit to your will. He gets up from the prayer and he goes to the disciples. You know what they're doing? Sleeping. And he says, could you, specifically Simon he talks to, Peter, could you not stay awake with me for even 1 hour? I don't know how literally to take the hour, how close it is to 60 minutes, but it gives kind of a feel for how long Jesus prayed. And they were dead asleep because of the stress on them. And Jesus, he gets it. He says to him, watch and pray that you may not enter temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. As important as rest is for overcoming temptation, prayer is exceedingly more important. It is a resource and a weapon that is underutilized, particularly during times of stress and pressure. Jesus goes off to pray again. Second time he comes after, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. We'll just call it an hour. They're sleeping again. Third time, same song, third verse. He goes and prays the same prayer 3 times. And God says 3 times, no, no, no. Now, there's a lesson in that for you and for me. When God says no to you, it's not because he doesn't like you. is because you are in the very place that he wants you right now. And if you consider to whom God said no throughout the whole Bible, here's some names that pop up. The Apostle Paul, Lord, take this thorn in the flesh away from me. God said no. Jesus in the garden, God said no. 3 times, God said no. King David, I want to build a temple. God says no. Moses wanted to enter the promised land. God said no. If God says no to you, it may be because he already has you where he wants you. And our prayer needs to end with, your will be done. With the 3rd time he came and found them asleep. Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. See, my betrayer is at hand. And here's what is so powerful. In the garden, Jesus was so stressed and distressed that he sweat drops of blood. Yet once he submits to the Father, who said no to him, he stands with a firmness that is immovable. It was not the chief priests that were in control in the garden. It was Jesus because of his prayer. It was not Caiaphas in control of the trial. It was Jesus because of this time of prayer. It was not Pilate that was in charge of Jesus. It was Jesus because of his prayer. Even at his crucifixion, those who nailed him there, they were not in charge. Jesus was in charge because he pre-established that he would submit to the will of God. Your power through pain is in the preparation of prayer in private. You can sweat all you want there. You can cry all you want there. You can be as weak as you want there. But once you have prayed to God, you will be able to stand in the face of any force. So here are several lessons of how to gain grit through the difficulties of life as Jesus modeled it. Number 1, pray to the Father who cares about you. Even if he says no, that doesn't diminish his immense care and love for you. Number 2, invite friends into the process. Even if they don't stay awake with you, their very presence is important. Them knowing that you're going through suffering is important. Don't suffer alone. 3rd, you determine before you ever reach the point of contact with your enemy, at the point of difficulty of your pain, you determine that you're going to follow God's will regardless of the outcome. And finally, stand your ground. Once you have knelt in prayer, you can stand in the face of anything.